So this is my child father, Austin John Metter. I met him in Magnolia, Texas in October or November of 2015. He started abusing me from the very beginning of the relationship, balling up his fists, pushing me and shoving me. A 911 call was made in Conroe, Texas at the Motel 6. Austin was pushing me, shoving me when I tried to leave him in 2015. Around the time where we met, I believe it was November 2015. And I tried to leave him when I saw he was still doing the meth and the heroin and stuff, and that he just was being disrespectful. And he started attacking me in the parking lot, shoving and pushing and forcing me to go back into the motel room. And then someone called 911 when they saw what he was doing to me in the parking lot, and the police just swarmed around and he made me go back in the room. Austin Metter was very troubled, and he already had a past. He had drug and theft charges that I did not know about. And he had invited me to his mother's house for Thanksgiving, and Cynthia Olvera invited us over in Magnolia, Texas. She had started helping us out with our motel, and he tried to attack Cynthia Olvera in her home in Magnolia, Texas, and I got in front of Cynthia and was saying, "Austin, don't attack your mother." And he picked up a butcher knife. Then he tried to swing it at me, and I got out the way, and then he chased his mother, Cynthia Olvera. She ran into her office and slammed the door and then locked it and called 911, asking for the police to come. And I was right there with him while he was outside of her door. I was watching, trying to see where I could hide, and he was beating on her door and trying to kick it down to stab her with the butcher knife, and her dog bit through his foot, and the police came. And this is his adopted mother, Cynthia Olvera. She was not telling the police the full facts of what happened when they came that day. She just told him that that he was being violent with her in her house, and that she didn't want him on the property. But she omitted the fact that he had pulled the butcher knife and chased her into the office with the butcher knife, trying to kick down the door. I knew she didn't tell them the whole story, and I kind of wanted to tell them that he pulled out the butcher knife, but I mean, he was my boyfriend, and I was trying to get away from him too at this point, and I was scared. I didn't really know what to do, but she didn't tell them that he pulled out the butcher knife, and the police gave her a 2-year protective order for him not to come on her property in Magnolia, Texas anymore for 2 years, because they had already been out to her house, I believe, several times on different calls for Austin. I don't know exactly what, but I know he had burglarized her home, and she did say that she had to call several times for him being violent with her in her home. So the Magnolia police let Austin go after they just gave Cynthia the protective order, and they didn't take him to jail. And she didn't tell them about the butcher knife, and I didn't tell them about the butcher knife. And then in front of her neighborhood, he started pushing me and shoving me, and then this white guy pulled up and asked if we needed a ride. And Austin went in the store to get a beer or something, and they were saying, the white man was saying that the only reason why he picked us up was because it looked like Austin was about to slap me in the streets. And then he dropped us off by Joseph Olvera's mother's home, and Austin's adopted grandmother, because Cynthia is his adopted mother and Joseph is his adopted father. And they dropped us off. He dropped us off over there, and they were saying that we could not come in the house, and I didn't want to, and Austin started assaulting me in front of the Olvera's house, and his auntie called the police, and then the police showed up and said why was he hitting me, and that he would go to jail if he came back if Austin was still hitting me, and he let him go. And then so we had got a ride because Cynthia and Joseph had came after the police were called to the Olveras, and they dropped us off at the Econo Lodge. And while we were there, it was around Thanksgiving time and after Thanksgiving, but while we were there, Austin tried to rape me in the room, and I tried to get away and then I pulled down the curtains as he was on my back trying to pull me down to the floor, and a white woman came by as he was on top of me assaulting me, and he was butt naked, and I was screaming for help, and she called 911 and the police showed up. This was in Conroe, Texas. The Conroe police ended up letting him go, and Austin and I moved into 230 Avenue G in Conroe, Texas, a one-bedroom studio apartment, and he attacked me there. This was in December 2015, so it was only like a month after I met him, a month or two. We had moved into this one-bedroom studio apartment, and maybe like a day after we moved in, he was slinging me around the apartment, and then I tried to run, and I ran in the living room, and he grabbed me and put me in a headlock, and then he started punching me over and over in my head. And the neighbor called the police, and he was arrested for assault, family violence, and he was taken to the Montgomery County Jail and charged with assault, family violence. And I didn't want to press charges, and they charged him again while he was incarcerated because he hit a correctional guard, and he was charged with assault on a public servant. So they released him and put him on a felony probation for assault on a public servant. They put him on a 2-year felony probation for assault on a public servant. And then I got a call saying that he was being released, and both of our name was on this lease at 230 Avenue G for the studio apartment. So when he was getting out, he did about 42 days on the assault, family violence charge from December 20th. He was arrested December 20th, 2015 on the assault, family violence charge. He did 42 days, and he was released February 4th, 2016 on the assault, family violence charge, but he was on a 2-year felony probation for assault on a public servant now. So after he got out, Austin tried to rape me in the home, and the landlord called the police. He had been pulling out knives in the house and threatening to kill himself after he tried to rape me. And when the police came, I let them hear a recording. He was on top of me, and I was screaming, asking him not to try to rape me. And he was taken to the Montgomery County Jail. He was charged with Class C rape, and he was taken to the Montgomery County Jail, and he only spent one night in jail on the Class C rape charge because I had paid a fine, $100 fine, to get him out the next day because Cynthia was saying that he was bipolar and he had other mental disorders and that he needed to be on medication, and that's why he was being violent. So I was trying to give him a chance, and I went and helped him get out. He did not want to take his medication from Tri-County. He wanted to continue to do methamphetamine, crack, and heroin. And he was released from the Montgomery County Jail on the rape charge, and he came back into the home at 230 Avenue G, continuing to drink and continuing to cause trouble and be violent with me while I was on my way to work. And he came up to my job being violent with me. He just continued to cause trouble in the neighborhood, and his probation officer found out that he had been arrested on the rape charge, and then his probation officer ordered for him to do 100 days in the Montgomery County Jail for a probation violation since he had gotten the Class C rape charge while he was still on the 2-year felony probation for assault on a public servant. So he was ordered to do 100 days in the Montgomery County Jail by his probation officer consecutively, and they put out a warrant for him to turn himself in at the end of that month, the same month that he had got the rape charge. So he had got out February 2016 in the beginning, and he had caught the rape charge probably by the end of February, and then he was told to turn himself in by the end of March. By this time, I was pregnant by Austin John Metter, and there were times that, you know, it was consensual. We were in love, but he did try to rape me, and there was a lot of abuse. So he was in the Montgomery County Jail doing the 100 days. The police had came and picked him up before he could turn himself in, just in case he tried to run. They said they just went on ahead and rounded him up with the warrants that they had out for, people who had warrants. And he went to the Montgomery County Jail, and I was evicted from 230 Avenue G because the police kept being called, and the landlord did not want all of that on the property. So I was pregnant on the streets with our son, Melbourne Halo Metter. And I was forced to walk around Conroe, Texas, being denied apartments because I had evictions. And so I finally found us, my son and I finally found us an apartment at 1301 Houston Street, apartment 3 in Conroe, Texas, while Austin was still in the Montgomery County Jail doing the 100 days for the rape charge for a probation violation because he was on the 2-year felony probation for assault on a public servant. And I probably was about 2 months pregnant. So February, March, and by April I was in this new apartment. So I was about 2 months pregnant when I moved into this apartment, and only my name was on the lease. His mother co-signed for me because I had the eviction, but Austin's name was not on the lease. So this is the building 1308, excuse me, not 1301, it's 1308 Houston Street, Conroe, Texas, apartment 3. I stayed at the one upstairs, and he basically came back into my apartment when he was released from the Montgomery County Jail on the 100 days for the rape charge for the 2-year felony probation for assault on a public servant. When he came to my home, he started punching holes all over the walls. He tore the sockets off of the walls. He snatched the light switches off of the walls. His parents had given me a white Grand Am when I was 5 months pregnant for me to drive, for me and my son, and he was kicking the car. He was snatching down the rear view mirror. He was kicking my front door. He punched out the glove compartment. He was stealing the vehicle and driving it 100 miles per hour away from the residence. He put me in the hospital about 3 times. I did not know if my baby was alive. I was 6 months pregnant when he got out of the Montgomery County Jail for the probation violation for the rape charge. And he got out July 10th. He got out in July 2016. So he went March, April, May, June, and July, beginning of July, he got out 2016. And I was in this apartment, and I was about 6 months pregnant, going on about 6 months, and he was attacking me and put me in the hospital in my 3rd trimester in my home. He was destroying it. He was throwing beer cans, tearing down the blinds, throwing pots of food, salt, and my neighbors were calling the police. He was flipping over the recliner chairs that his parents gave me, flipping them over in the living room, and he chased me outside butt naked, screaming for help. He was terrorizing me inside of my home, and the police were called by my neighbors. I had tried to walk away one day and get out of the house, and he came outside and attacked me in the streets while pregnant, and a black woman called the police. I called the police. I tried to pull off in my vehicle and leave. He jumped on the back of the vehicle and started kicking the window. He rolled on the back of the car and was kicking it with steel-toe boots on, trying to kick in the window as I was trying to drive and get away from him and my property. He continued to abuse me on this property throughout my pregnancy, and he also attacked me at the Ace Check Cashing store in Conroe, Texas, and the manager had to call 911, and the police showed up, and I had a cut on my thumb, a cut on my hand. I was bleeding. They ended up letting him go when I called the police when he was on the back of the car, and I had a temporary protective order from him at 230 Avenue G, but that only was temporary, and I didn't press charges. And so he continued to attack me and be violent. So my dad, Andrew Jones, came to live with us at 1308 Houston Street at apartment 3, Conroe, Texas 77301 when I was getting closer to my due date, and he was there while Austin was attacking me in the home. And when I was at the Woodlands Hospital getting checked to see how far I was in labor, to see if they would admit me in the Woodlands Hospital, he started being violent with me while we were in the labor and delivery unit. And the nurses tried to come in there and calm him down, and he started to try to knock over some of the medical equipment towards the nurses, and the security had to come to escort him off of the property. The security guard was asking me if I felt safe leaving with Austin, and even though I was not far enough along for them to admit me, I was in labor when this took place. The nurses from the labor and delivery unit told me that Austin could not be there for the birth of our son at the hospital because he was too violent to have in the labor and delivery unit around babies. My dad was there, and he had to drive me around to different hospitals to see if I could have Melbourne at Conroe Regional Hospital close to my house, because Austin was saying that he was not going to allow me to have my baby there if he could not be there for the birth of our son. So right before I gave birth to Melbourne, Austin had gotten drunk and came into the house late, and he started to attack me, and my dad, Andrew Jones, had to jump in, and he had to fight Austin and hem him up on the wall and punch him in the jaw. And I almost had to pull out a knife, pocket knife out of my bra and stab Austin in the neck with the knife, because I was pregnant, about to give birth to Melbourne, and there was no way that I could fight him. So when Drew got involved, that pretty much was what saved me from having to stab him.